Welcome to the first meeting of the Star Wars Show Book Club. Today we're discussing Alphabet Squadron by Alexander Freed. And stick around until the end when the author himself will join me to answer some of your questions about the novel. Hello there! Kristin Baver here, ready to host a book club call with a few friends. Our story begins just a few weeks after the Battle of Endor and delves into what happens next for the Rebel Alliance. Alphabet Squadron is a ragtag crew of 5 troubled pilots, all flying vastly different starfighters. In command, we have Erica Quell, a recent defector from the Empire now at the helm of an X-Wing, as well as Chasna Chaddock, an outspoken Thelan in a B-Wing, a cynic with a smile, Nath Tenzin in his beloved Y-Wing, Will Lark, an idealistic A-Wing flyboy, and the mysterious masked Kairos, who hunts the Empire in her U-Wing. As the first book in a trilogy, Alphabet Squadron sets up the backstories of our 5 pilots, their mission to take down Shadow Wing, an elite TIE unit, and explores the growing pains of this thrown-together family learning how to trust each other and work together. Today on our first ever episode, we have 3 amazing panelists. We have Mandi Muñoz, we have Amy Ratcliffe, and we have Justin Bolger. Thank you guys so much for joining us, and thank you so much for reading a book in a week. That was amazing.
We all crushed it. You're welcome.
We did. We crushed it. All right.
Literally 2 minutes ago.
Literally just done. You were finishing it while we were on this call. I'm curious who your favorite new character was, either among the Alphabet Squadron or the book as a whole. I really did like Quell from the start because there was so much interesting character development to be had from exploring all of her damage and her motivations. And right from the get-go, she was lying, but we didn't know what she was lying about. And so just kind of writing along with her, I found to be really interesting. But I also really loved Ito, the torture droid therapist buddy, right? But I also kept actually picturing him coming into the room, hovering, making that whirring sound that they do, but then also being like, how are you feeling today? The photoreceptor kind of moving. And
I liked that there was a note of kind of sinisterness to it, just because he's an interrogation droid, and really as a Star Wars fan, the only point of contact you have is the one that comes in to interrogate Leia. So you know that he's around, and you're like, oh, okay.
Harrison Dula, I loved seeing her again. I know she wasn't in the book a huge amount, but watching that space mom, how she's evolved. She's always been awesome and strong, but how she's kind of taken those space mom skills from Rebels and now applies them to everyone she leads as a general.
You are absolutely right about her being a space mom. I was struck that the way that she treated Erica reminded me a lot of Ezra in the beginning of Rebels, where she was testing him in these very small ways that led to her trusting him with more.
Was there anything that you found in this story that shifted your thinking on the Star Wars saga as a whole?
I would say yes. I am so fascinated by that period in time after Return of the Jedi. We got some of the aftermath books and some in Shattered Empire, but seeing the transition of Imperials that are like, what do we do now? And also the Rebel Alliance doing the same exact thing and trying to build a new government.
There was a really strong part, the first part of the book, where she noticed a gentleman who had augmentations and was saying that it was probably a Death Trooper. Just having that Imperial insight, but applied in service of a human being versus the organization as a whole, I thought really opened up the story for me.
I think there are a couple points too where, especially when she's on Traitor's Remorse and towards the beginning, where I was sitting kind of inside her mind and seeing things through her eyes really made me, and I feel like Justin's going to jump on this as soon as it's out of my mouth, but it made me feel like, oh no, the New Republic isn't any better than the Empire was. Yeah, I know, I see your face.
As long as you brought it up, I was going to wait a little while. So this is why she was my favorite character, is because obviously I'm a huge Imperial fan. She was an Imperial. She fought in a lot of battles. She was with this really notorious group that's still out there doing the wrong thing, because she's an ordinary person who got caught up in everything. And I think, going back to my point about everyone in the Star Wars galaxy versus people like Luke Skywalker or Darth Vader, you're really living in this setting where giants are stepping all over you all the time, and you have to make choices as to what you're going to do in the wake that those giants leave.
You're so eloquent, Justin.
I know. Everything you just said, Justin, it just leads me to that one moment, that last moment of grandmother's, and her last thought is, did I make the right decision? Have all the choices that I've made until this moment been the right ones, or were they wrong? And then that's it.
We see a little bit of an Imperial propaganda. We see more of First Order propaganda in later books like Phasma, but you don't hear a lot about the Rebel side, though it exists. So I just like my little heart melted when she recalled seeing a propaganda video starring Jyn Erso and a quote from her that rebellions are built on hope. And that helped inspire someone.
The one thing that I think is so wonderful just about Star Wars in general is it's all so human, regardless of like all these fantastical elements in the space opera and the battles and all of it. There are still things that just remind you that everyone involved has human emotion and has regrets and questions everything happening around them.
And nothing was sugar-coated with the characters, which I appreciated, like, in that regard. Like, everyone has trauma. And I think that's true in a lot of cases in Star Wars, but we see it glossed over with, he's the Jedi hero who will save us all, or this is a legend, you know? So when you get to the individuals and you see all the baggage that both sides have, even when they're celebrating, they're thinking about comrades they've lost or past victories or losses. And I liked seeing all that weave together to create kind of a realistic portrait in a galaxy far, far away.
With Grandmother in particular, I felt like she in The Messenger, she was also just kind of like looking to the Messenger as a lot of Imperials may have looked to the Emperor just for like guidance and for someone to tell them like, yes, you know, my child, you're doing the right thing. Only when she lay dying that she was like, oh, but maybe I have some doubts.
I thought your point also, Kristin, was mirrored really well. There's an exchange in the book where Hera is asked if it's all worth it, essentially, and Hera doesn't answer, whereas Grandmother is only now beginning to question. I liked the presence of mind that exchange gave to Hera.
Yeah, and there were a couple points where she, you know, it was almost like she was reminiscent of the simplicity of the beginning of the rebellion when it was just her and her family, and they were just trying to get food to people in the Thal, and it was like this very, you know, we can make a small difference. You can see that difference right away. It's not this, you know, enormous, tapestry of different threads, and you're pulling on them and just trying to figure out, what the cause and effect will be.
I think not having fought a galactic war, it's hard to imagine, but I don't mean to be sassy. I don't know.
You do mean to be sassy. You've been sassy all day.
A little bit.
I just can't help but think, if it wasn't worth it, then why would she still be in it? We know what she's lost. And if she doesn't keep fighting, then it wasn't worth it, you know? And then she just has given up. And then all of it was for nothing.
Oh, man. That's giving me Rise of Skywalker vibes. I'm sorry. You made me sad, Mandy.
I'm so sorry.
It's okay. It's all right. It's just like, Sorry, go ahead, Justin.
No, it's okay. I'm trying to say, if you want to cry.
No, I just need a minute. It's okay.
She's gone through so much that she's seen the alternative to the life that she's leading right now. She could step away and then go someplace and fly on the Thal with her son or do whatever she wanted to do. I read that as she wasn't directly answering, but was kind of asking Erica to not try to foul off having to look for the answer herself by getting it from Hera. But you look around at where you are right now, at where your friends are right now, where your former colleagues are right now, and where the galaxy is right now, and you tell yourself if it's all worth it. And then that's not for me to tell you. And then she left. And that's great parenting, which is, I think, at the core of who Hera is.
It also makes Hera a much better therapist than Kaito. She's way more effective. With the exception of Justin, oftentimes when we're looking at the Star Wars saga, it's pretty clear, black and white, who the villain is, who the villain's supposed to be. Yeah, I can see her face still. But I'm curious, in this story, who's the real villain?
I don't think that there's a villain. I think that there are just different choices you make, and depending on how that choice affects other people, you're considered a villain.
Yeah, I'm a rebel through and through. I have the tattoo to prove it. And so anytime like I read a book like Alphabet Squadron that gives me a little more insight and empathy towards Imperials, I'm always like, wait, what am I feeling? I'm so confused. But
it doesn't feel good.
It doesn't. It feels weird, but I appreciate getting a bigger understanding of both sides.
If I were like in the universe, I would totally be Imperial, all hardcore, all the way, like because
friends.
Sorry, Avery and I will take the Rebel Alliance. It's fine.
For me, it was more about the obstacles that each of these characters had to overcome. And this is going to sound so cheesy when I say it, out loud, but it's just let it happen. But like the obstacle that most of our protagonists had to overcome was the one within themselves. Getting over your pride, getting over your self-doubt, like letting yourself make a decision, letting yourself become a part of a group and accept things and accept yourself for what you are, and take all of that internalized trauma and everything that's happened to you, propel you forward in a meaningful way.
I think ultimately it's a story that questions whether or not someone like Quell, who maybe was doubtful about Operation Cinder, but was a tool for the Empire and was willing to carry it out and only defected after, and still under some really weird circumstances. Can someone like that actually ever be redeemed? Well, thank you, Justin, Amy, and Mandi, for joining us today for our first episode of the Star Wars Show Book Club. It was so great to chat with you guys about Alphabet Squadron. You opened my eyes to some new ideas that I hadn't thought about when I was reading it, which is my favorite part of being in a book club, that you get to see from a different point of view besides your own.
What you did.
Said it. Thank you so much, Alex, for joining us.
Hi, I'm excited to be here.
People are real excited about Alphabet Squadron, which is great. I got quite a few people saying this is my favorite Star Wars book, and some folks who could not control even asking one question, they asked us like 3 or 4. So they were very enthusiastic, which is great to see. So first question comes from @SoloASW Story. What was it like writing Hera, a pre-existing and beloved character?
Hera's an interesting one. Obviously I had to go back to the source material and sort of spend a while studying the voice. That's always the toughest thing to deal with when writing characters who have been on the screen before, while still being true to that character.
I mean, Space Mom's gonna Space Mom. You can't take that out of her.
I think that is a fundamental truth of Hera.
The Bobby Lynn writes, Chas Nachetic, what was your inspiration for making her Thelan? Just a favorite species or some other method?
The core concept of the character was flexible enough that she could have ended up as a number of different species. Like, that wasn't the starting point for me. I wasn't like, okay, I want to build a Thelan. What's a Thelan going to look like in this context? They've got some interesting backstory in terms of, this is a species that, is not particularly well regarded by the rest of the galaxy. There aren't a whole lot of them left. That seemed interesting in combination with Chas's general persona, and it just felt like a good fit and something that hadn't been overdone.
This one comes from Idaho, who says, Alphabet Squadron is my favorite Star Wars novel. When did you hear that part? That wasn't an essential part of the question, but I feel like that's just lovely.
I will take that just as the question, frankly.
That's the question. No question, just a comment. It's the best. Idaho writes, I love the simulated Death Star run in your novel. In your mind, do you think this is a rare training tool, or do you imagine most pilots log their simulated hours first, like modern pilots?
Yeah, I sort of pictured it as, whenever possible, pilots would be getting time in a simulator. I think we see a little of that in Rebels, and, obviously not everyone needs it. Luke just sort of jumps straight in a cockpit, but it's one of those, under ideal circumstances, if we have the equipment and, the pilot can use some training, this is what we should be doing.
Brooding Wookiee asks, what challenges did you have in bringing such an unknown era in the Star Wars timeline to life?
I'm sorry, I'm just stuck on the Brooding Wookiee. That's a great name.
That's okay, I know.
Okay, yes, there is an actual question there. So, yeah.
I know, but it puts a picture in your mind, the Brooding Wookiee typing this out.
Yeah, just sort of swinging his paws against a keyboard somewhere. And yes, era. So that was actually one of the draws of the project for me is, figuring out what the Rebellion / New Republic looks like at a time when it doesn't even know what it should look like, and that's one of the themes that sort of carries on through the whole trilogy as well. Is all right, well, we're all scrambling to figure out what this world looked like. What does it look 2 months later, and then another 2 months later, and how how do things evolve so quickly during a relatively brief span of time? And it has to evolve quickly, because if it doesn't, things just start to fall apart.
Well, thank you, Alex.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the great questions.
And thanks to all of you who joined us from home, sent in your questions, and watched along today. Don't forget to pick up the sequel to Alphabet Squadron, Shadowfall, starting June 23rd. And check out the Imperial side of the story in the comic series TIE Fighter. And tune in next time when the Star Wars Show Book Club returns to explore Queen's Shadow by E.K. Johnston. Until then, may the Force be with you.